A very warm welcome, dear brothers and sisters, to the Redemptorist Friendship Circle, a podcast by the Redemptorist community of the Vice Province of Malaysia and Singapore. In this podcast, we try to talk about everything Redemptorist. We try to introduce you to the Redemptorists around the world and try to talk about interesting and current topics in and around the Catholic Church. I am Terence Wee, a Redemptorist priest serving here in Novena Church, Singapore, and a host of the podcast. For our long-time listeners, you might be aware we have another host, Father Gerard Lewis, who is normally with us here, but he is quite engaged in a lot of activities at the moment. So in replacement, I've decided to invite the man of the hour, Deacon Anthony Prabhu, to come and co-host with me. So let us just welcome Anthony Prabhu.
Thank you, Father Terence. A very good morning to all our viewers and listeners. It is indeed a privilege and honor for me to sit alongside with Father Terence and have this podcast. So we warmly welcome everyone.
Yes, so this is the new year. So before we begin anything, let us just say greet a very happy and blessed new year to all our listeners. Now, this new year is especially special for Prabhu. I will call you Prabhu from now on, because your big day is coming, right? Prabhu, tell us when are you going to be raised to the order of Melchizedek? So
Yes,
let us know about your ordination
yes.
information.
Yes, thank you, Father Terence. And it is indeed a very big moment in my life because right from my baptism and all the sacraments, this particular sacrament of the Holy Orders, which I thought I was never worthy enough, but then the formation helped me and the Redemptress helped me. So this coming Friday on the 17th of January 2025, on the memorial of St. Anthony of the Desert, in the
Okay.
evening at 5:30 p.m. in our Novena church, I'll be ordained to the order of priesthood by His Eminence William Cardinal Goh, and concelebrated by many of our Redemptorists here in the Vice Province of Singapore and Malaysia, also from some nearby units, as well as the diocesan priests of the Archdiocese of Singapore.
Okay, wow, that's a lot. All right, so in brief, this Friday on the 17th of January at 5:30 p.m., we are going to celebrate the ordination to the priesthood for Deacon Prabhu. There will be a lot of people that will join in this celebration, and we hope that you will be part of this celebration also. So do come to Novena and join us in this big celebration. And if you can't, at least join us online. So, Prabhu, how are you feeling? Are you excited about the whole
Yeah,
event?
very much excited. The one thing I'm looking forward, apart from celebrating Eucharist, is to sit in the confessional box because that is butter for the Redemptorist. I've dreamt about this moment for a long time. So my first mass will be the following day, that is on
On
Sunday.
Sunday, yeah,
On
2 days
Sunday,
after the
2 days
ordination,
after,
on the
on
19th.
19th of January at 10 a.m. also at Novena Church. So everyone is welcome. Do come and pray for me and also for all the Redemptorists here in the Vice Province of Malaysia and Singapore, and also throughout the world for more
Okay.
occasions as well.
All right. So I'm sure in the future episode we can invite Prabhu back after being a priest to discuss a little bit of your experience and how are things like after becoming a priest and ministering as a priest. Today we have a very special guest with us, and we will be having a very interesting conversation with him. This guest is Father Noel Kehoe from the province of Ireland, and he will be talking with us about a very interesting topic, and that is addiction. That is his studies at the moment. He's doing a doctorate studies in addiction, and he will specifically talk to us about how we can perhaps better deal with some addiction to, say, pornography and masturbation. So, without further ado, I would like to just invite all of us, the listeners, to listen to this rather interesting interview with Father Noel Kehoe. So, enjoy, and we'll come back to you and discuss after the interview. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let us welcome Father Noel Kehoe.
Hi, everybody. Hi, Terence.
Okay, so Father Noel Kehoe is a Redemptorist from Ireland. I had the good fortune of meeting him when I was studying in Belgium, and I had to make a short trip over to Ireland to meet up with my vice provincial then, Father Gerard. And yeah, I got a chance to meet Father Noel, and he was very, very kind to invite me back to Ireland. To the parish that he was in charge of that time. I believe it's St. Gerard in Dundalk. And so I went there to help out with the 9 days novena and join in the big celebration of the feast of St. Gerard. Um, just a fun fact, if any of you had attended our Tridium celebration this year, in fact, and you have came for the candlelight evening, uh, that was very much inspired by the novenas over there in the parish that Father Noel was in. So their last novena every day, they kind of dimmed down the whole place and they lit up lots of candles and had a very wonderful and beautiful liturgy. And that was how I was very inspired to do that. So we tried to do that, and I would say that it was quite beautifully done. So thank you very much, Father Noel, for inspiring us. And hopefully, the next time we do it, maybe next year, we can invite you to come and to
Mm,
help to perhaps lead us in the celebration. Okay,
that
so
would that would be wonderful.
let's
Yeah.
keep our fingers crossed. So before we continue, I also want to say that when I had some conversation with Father Noel at that time, he mentioned to me that he was doing some studies that in a very interesting field. He's studying addiction, and I said, oh. One day, when we started the podcast, I say one day I have to have Father Noel on the our podcast to talk about this whole area of addiction. But before we go into the details, Father Noel, would you like to just introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about yourself, and maybe what made you finally become a Redemptorist? I think it's a very unique choice in life. So please let us know a little bit about yourself.
Okay, Terence. Thank you very much, and thank you for your very kind already introduction. And the round of applause was particularly nice. Thank you very much. That's a nice touch.
Yeah,
So, and it was a wonderful opportunity when we met. And I'm the
yeah,
type of person that when you meet somebody like yourself or Father Gerard as they came for a visit, I've always had an eye out. Okay, uh, invite people over to give us a hand at the novenas because you saw that it was really it's quite a big celebration,
yes.
and it's a wonderful thing in the Irish province, our novenas, but we're getting very few. The Redemptorists are getting very few, so it's always wonderful to have Redemptorists from overseas. So yeah, I was born and brought up very close to Dundalk, where you came to. Uh,
So that's in the middle of Ireland, somewhere in
so
the
yeah,
middle of
so
Ireland.
we're right on the border. If people can imagine Ireland, and if you can place Dublin and Belfast on the east coast, so I'm right on the border between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland. So
Okay.
Newry, where I was born, was the last town in the north, and Dundalk is the first town in the Republic of Ireland. So my family were right from on the border, 1 foot on each side. So
Okay.
it was makes for an interesting childhood. So yes, so I brought up in Ireland at that time. Um, at This was in the 70s, in the 80s. Church life was very, very much part of everyday life in Ireland for everybody. And I had a very positive experience of church growing up. And I had particularly a very positive experience of the Redemptorists. And we used to go to the Novena in Dundalk when I was a child. And there were two big events as children that we looked forward to. Christmas time for Santa Claus and October time for St. Gerard Magella's Novena. And it was
Okay.
so it was, yeah, very much part of my growing up. Um, I went to school. The idea of priesthood was sort of always maybe in the background, but
Mm-hmm.
when I came to 18, I went off to university, and I had very much other plans in place,
Yeah,
and
just like many of us.
yeah, and had a wonderful time at university. Studied international commerce. The
Mm,
European Union was just opening up at that time, whatever. So it was very much focused towards conducting business in Europe, and so a very exciting time, I remember. And coming to the end of my time, I didn't know really what I wanted to do. I was being encouraged to go into accountancy. Marketing was a big area that everyone was trying to get into at that time as well, and I ended up applying for the they call the milk round of sort of the big six accountancy
mm-hmm.
international companies.
Yes.
I think they're big four now. And
Yep.
so I came out. I got two job offers out of that, and nobody. This was the mid 90s. Nobody had really guaranteed work in Ireland. The economy was terrible, so I would have been mad not to take it. But I don't know. My heart was never really in it. I really wanted to. I really wanted to go overseas in sort of international development for a year or two, like with the likes of Caritas, so the Irish equivalent of Caritas,
Mm-hmm.
and I'd started to look into that, and then unfortunately, my family had a tragedy, and my sister died,
Oh.
and very of cancer, and I suppose it began a whole process of the meaning of life, existential crisis,
Mm-hmm.
and that. So there were real sort of genuine questions about what were what was meaningful in life, what was maybe God calling me to, and I decided that in my mind that God was calling me to go to work in Africa, and so I joined the Redemptorists, and about 6 months later, I discovered that the Irish Redemptorists didn't go to Africa. And
Okay.
at that time anyway, and so I joined, and yeah, one year led to the other. I went to Brazil and worked in Brazil for a number of years as part of my training, and it was, I suppose, it's a journey that you grow into, and sometimes you grow into it or you grow out of it. So
Mm-hmm.
um, I had worked already before I joined for a number of years in accountancy, and I grew out of that. So, but it grew very much into the Redemptorists as a not just as a missionary group, but as yeah, there's something very inspirational still about our founding story and St. Alphonsus, and going out to the places that people don't want to be, finding the people on the margins. And often, and Pope Francis is very big on this, that
Mm-hmm.
there's,
Mm-hmm.
there's a
Yes.
huge temptation for us as church people to remain in the center, always, and
Mm-hmm.
yet I think that God is often more found on the peripheries and on the margins. And that was an insight certainly of Alphonsus as well.
Yeah. I I believe in the history of the Catholic Church, the Irish um, um, clergy, or at least the Irish missionaries, have played a very important role in bringing Christ to the four corners of the world. And even for the Redemptorists, I believe the Irish have been to quite a lot of places and started communities, Redemptorist communities, and even here in Asia, quite a few of our Asian countries being um, how to say it, we started off with some roots that has connection with Ireland. So perhaps you could just very briefly, this because this podcast I do not want to focused on the redemptorists in Ireland, but I maybe you can just give us a little bit of a taste as to the history of the growth and the development of the redemptorists over there, and what's the current status, and are we still strong? Do we still get vocations? And
Sure.
how's things over there?
Okay, so the Redemptorist story in Ireland began. We were founded in 1852,
Okay,
and
wow,
when
that's
they came to Limerick, we were part of the Anglo-Dutch province, so founded out of Clapham in London and Bishop Eaton in Liverpool, um, and very quickly after maybe 30 or 40 years became an independent province, because Ireland was a very Catholic country. It was post famine. It was a very very poor country, and Catholicism was very much tied up with the identity of being Irish as well, and with the advantages and disadvantages that come with that, and very quickly, I mean, it really mushroomed, the whole growth of the Irish province very very quickly, and by the time it became an independent province, it was handed over Australia, which now and Oceania. So it has foundations. It is important in the foundations of those provinces. Then the Philippines. So the Cebu, what became ultimately the Cebu province. Um, India, and at that time Sri Lanka. Um, they began a mission there in the 1930s. I'm just not 100% sure of the dates, so we'll leave the dates out of
yeah,
it.
yeah,
But
yeah, yeah, that's fine.
the
Yeah.
India, and then ultimately Brazil, and then has been important in other missions as well around in Africa, more recently in Mozambique.
At our peak, roughly, do you have a number? How many Irish redemptorists did we have?
Okay, so I'd say the peak hit somewhere probably about the 1970s, 1980s, and it would have been over 300 Redemptorists. And even
Okay.
when I joined in 1997, there were over 200 Redemptorists in Ireland. And
And
then,
how about
and
now?
then men in the vice provinces as well. Now we're down to about 70.
Oh wow, that's a drastic drop
Sure.
in yeah.
So in Ireland, there was a huge vocations boost in the 1950s, and those men are all in their 90s now, but they form really still the bulk of the Irish province. So it's an older aging province. Very few vocations. We're blessed to have one young man who's just finished his novitiate in the Philippines, and so you see how things have changed.
So okay.
And because there's no novitiate in North Europe, and yes, so a very very radically changed. And of course, we're all in conversations about restructuring in the whole of Europe
Yeah.
together, and that. So difficult times, but a very different. Uh, uh, yeah, a very different landscape than even when I joined in 1997.
Okay, so I'm just going to leave it at there for the moment because we are planning to talk to some other conference in Ireland. So
Good,
with them, I'm probably going to ask a little bit more about the history and the work that you all are
good.
doing over there right now.
Yeah.
But today I want to focus more on you because you
Okay.
are very interesting redemptorist.
Mm.
As I said, you did not follow the path of many of us. Like when we continue further studies, we'll either do theology, we'll do spirituality, we'll do spiritual direction, some sort in that field. But you've done something a little bit different, and you did some addiction study. I'm not sure whether is it in under the field of psychology, perhaps.
Okay.
So maybe you can share with us a little bit about your field of studies.
Okay. So just to go back, I did a master's actually in theology, and in ethics, and in the area of narrative ethics, and that was very good. But once I finished that, I was really very keen to get into the mission and get into work, and but I ended up in a lot of administration and leadership, whatever, for the last 16 years,
Yes.
and so. Um, sometimes we end up, sort of that our life goes in a direction that we mightn't have planned, and
Mhm.
certainly that was never my plan to be so long as sort of rectors of communities or on provincial councils and that type of thing. So and I think it was back in 2017, I was on visitation to our vice province in Brazil with the provincial, and speaking to some of the younger men there, and it's a very alive thing, and a lot of them doing studies. And I said, you know what, I still have this thing in me about continue my intellectual development and something that would be in the service of people. And so I had quite a lot in theology, and
Mhm.
I decided that I wanted to look at psychology. I used to find myself reading a lot in about
Mhm.
psychology, and so I did online. So as I continued on in my work and my roles in between 2017 and 2023, I completed an online master's in psychology, which would allow me
Mhm.
then to go on if I wanted to become a chartered psychologist in whatever area that would be. So in 2023, at the end of our 4-year term, I got a chance now to step down after 4 consecutive terms. And I said,
Mhm.
okay, as a sabbatical initially, and let's see where it goes. I would like to actually go and do some further study. So initially, I had asked to go directly into a doctorate in counselling psychology in Trinity in Dublin, and so it was all seemed to be set. And unfortunately, that I didn't succeed in the interview, and it seemed as if everything had collapsed and everything I'd been working towards, whatever, had gone. And through one of my professors at the University of Liverpool, um, I discovered she had advised me to look at King's College in London as an interim year, and and then to reapply for doctorate the following year. But as I did, King's College it's a very significant medical training facility in Europe, actually, and its Department of Addictions is really very research and intensive, and I think number two in the world, number one in Europe. And
Wow.
I I got a bursary to go and study there for a year.
Okay.
And I mean as a priest, um, I mean, the whole world of addiction impacts on all of us,
Yeah.
and particularly during COVID, there was I mean, pastorally, whatever, we were dealing with suicides, we were dealing with death,
Mhm.
whatever, addiction became a huge issue for people.
Yeah.
And I mean, the reality is that in my own life and history, whatever, I mean, addiction has come very very close as well. Whatever, in Ireland, yeah, there's a history of the Irish, yeah, but
Is
so it was an
is
area
there
that.
sorry, just out of curiosity, is there a specific area of addiction that you are focusing on in your studies?
So okay, so okay, when I went to King's, this wasn't what I had initially thought, because it's very medically orientated. So I learned the medical model of addiction, which was hugely interesting, and the
Mm-hmm.
neuroscience of addiction. I come from a psychology background, and it was slightly different. So I ended up in the course of the studies at King's. We were actually put into research groups, and I ended up researching and writing a paper on a drug that I hadn't even heard of, and called ketamine.
Oh,
And
okay.
so ketamine is hugely prevalent in Southeast Asia as a recreational drug. It's actually an anesthetic that was developed in the 1960s,
Oh,
and but it's like right across the world now. It's become a recreational drug of choice. It's cheaper to make. It's more prevalent, nearly getting as prevalent as, say, something like cocaine. And it is a very, very, it's a drug that sort of gives you a type of outer body experience, and that if it works positively, it can bring you into a very dark place, which is obviously the negative side of it. They're called the K-hole. But one of the problems with it is that with chronic use, it does terrible damage to your body.
Okay.
And more, we're seeing young people presenting with very serious issues with bladder incontinence. It destroys a lot of the organs in
Mhm,
your body
mhm,
with chronic use. And there is no pharmacological interventions that can be made to actually help people come off or to reduce the cravings or to help them to come off it. There is for alcohol, there is for cocaine, there is for lots of other, like heroin, lots of other drugs, but not for ketamine. And so my area of research was looking at psychological interventions to help people to move from sort of into harm reduction, whatever, to cut back on ultimately to give up ketamine use. So that's the area that I ended up. It wasn't what I anticipated, but more importantly, the studies brought me in and sort of opened my mind into this whole world of addiction that is just
mhm.
much more complicated than we would ever imagine.
Okay, so maybe I'm just going to ask a question based on your whole experience in this study or this in your research. What were some of the most surprising discoveries or some most insightful discoveries that you have had?
Okay, it's a really good question, and so I think the first big discovery for me was that we have to distinguish between prevalence of drug use and problematic drug use. And I suppose and the world that I came from was just drugs are bad, and that everybody who's going to take drugs are going to end up in trouble
Mhm,
and
mhm,
addicted. Out of my naivety, drugs have never been part of my life. Uh,
mhm, mhm,
uh, so what I discovered in this is that there's a difference between prevalence of drug use, which is very high,
mhm,
and in sectors that we might be surprised at. Okay, amongst people who we might be surprised at. Recreationally, drugs are used um, every weekend by people, but it's actually only about 12 or 15% of people will end up developing a problem with drugs, whether
okay.
it's cocaine or alcohol or ketamine or whatever they're going to use. So that was a big insight for me. And what was a bigger insight was that how prevalent it
Can I
is.
just pause there and just try to understand it a little bit? Are you trying to say that it is it is less easy to be addicted than uh, what the media is generally telling us?
Well, how do you measure less or more? So if you've got 10 friends on these statistics, more or less just under two will end up with
Okay.
serious addiction problems.
Okay.
That's that is a lot of people when you take a global population.
Okay. So sorry for breaking your train of thought. So please
No, no,
continue
no.
as to what.
But
Yeah.
this is the bit that surprised me, Terence.
Okay.
So the question then is asked:
Mm-hmm.
how is it that some people can drink alcohol
Mm-hmm.
and have one drink, two drinks, three drinks, and then stop and be very happy to and go home? And why
Mm-hmm.
is it then that one or two people out of that 10 develop problematic um, use of alcohol or cocaine or whatever? And just all substances. I'm just going to treat them all as substances.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And this is where this is where we get into the area of um, really having to tackle stigma and maybe older
Okay.
theories. So there's
All
lots of
right.
theories, and there's no one theory why that happens. For some
All right.
people, it's genetic. That there seems to be maybe a genetic predisposition that when we take these drugs that affect our minds, that it becomes we just can't stop. We just want more and more and more. There's like a switch that doesn't go off,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and so it's a genetic issue. But that's not the full story either, because there's some people have these genes and they're not addicted. So then
Okay.
there's also, okay, well, there's a culture and an environment. Ireland traditionally was a very big drinking culture, and
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I, and that had a huge impact on the number of people who got into problematic alcohol use. Okay, so it's
Mhm.
supported by a culture. They used to say, there was a joke they used to have, that a man died, and at the wake his wife was there, and he was a very heavy drinker, and the people came in, and the wife says, "Oh God, the drink killed him." And somebody says, "Oh, was he in AA?" And she says, "Oh no, he wasn't that bad." So it was that drink was all right. It was part of the culture, or whatever. I mean, but they didn't want to, give labels or names, whatever. So there's a cultural that there can be a cultural element. There can be some people that, for many people that we find in addiction, there has been some deep trauma,
Mhm. Mhm.
and that this becomes like what they call the self-medicating hypothesis. But the reality is that there's lots of people who had trauma that don't end up in addiction, and there's lots of people in addiction that didn't have trauma. So that's not the full answer either. So it's a
Yeah.
little bit of all of these things, and I think when we come to talk about addiction, I think particularly as church people, we
Mhm.
have to be very careful about our moral judgments, because a lot of it, certainly in the past, was that this was a moral issue, that it was people who had no self control or couldn't exercise will, whatever. That is really certainly one of the theories that is debunked, and that
Okay.
many people who are in addiction would do anything not to be in that state of affairs. So it's a very complicated area, Terence, and there's no
Okay.
one easy answer as to why people become addicted. So for me, that was a huge insight and discovery for me. That
Mhm.
and so we see that in the medical world, that they have moved away from a model of recovery, which would be more from, maybe say, from a spiritual or from a psychological area, and because their science, and people have to work out of where they are. Their science will look more at harm reduction. So if somebody's drinking 25 bottles of wine a week, and they cut back to 10 bottles of wine a week, that's a
Mhm.
huge health benefit for them.
Okay.
That's also a huge health benefit for our health services. Like in the UK, addiction costs the NHS, the health service, 48 billion
All
a year.
right.
So,
Okay.
so the medical people are very focused on harm reduction. Okay, we can't solve it all, but let's at least try to get them to reduce and to reduce harm. As a psychologist, on my own story, from a ministry point of view, okay, that's fine. Okay, let's do that. Let's bring people so far on that line to get to into harm reduction, but then let's try and see if we can help people to actually live a full life, not
Okay.
just not just a harm reduced life.
Yeah.
And you'll hear heroin addicts, particularly who've gone into recovery, that yeah, it's great to cut back or to have it out of your life, but we're still left with all of the issues that we have, the traumas, the difficulties, the lack of housing, all of those things that we want to do. So for me, that's where the mission is.
Okay.
How do we
So
help
in
people
a way,
move?
so
Sorry.
I'm sorry. I'm just so excited to ask this question. I think you have opened the door for me to just ask this question that has been in my mind for the longest time since I started ministering as a priest. So I think you are. I cannot find anyone more suitable to ask this question. As you know, as priest, I'm not sure about over there in Ireland, but definitely here in Singapore and in Malaysia, wherever that I am ministering, I do not know whether this falls under addiction, but I think when it comes to confession, I hope I'm not getting into trouble by saying this, but I'm just saying mainly my sense. Oftentimes, perhaps let's say 100 person that comes into the confessional, maybe you'll get 90 of them that will touch on something with regards to sexual temptation. Or to be more specific, uh, many people will just talk about uh, the, the their lack of control with pornography and of course masturbation. Now I think this has been something that is really present, in the confessional, and I think it's something that is also very strongly discussed, especially as Catholics, right? So but after years of hearing confession and counseling and talking to people, I sense that strong desire of a lot of people to try to figure out a way out of this. But it seems like many people, they are just stuck in a kind of cycle that they can't seem to get out of. So perhaps you today can really show the light, or just give some inspiration, and just try to help us figure out, maybe just your insight into this whole thing on what might be a healthy way in looking into this matter.
That's not challenging at all, Terence. So thank
Yes,
you very
of
much
course.
for that.
I'm just asking the simple question. Yeah, yeah.
Um, okay, look, I think it's really, I mean, it's an important topic because it impacts on everybody's life. I mean, I think you mentioned there as particularly as Catholics, whatever. I mean, the question is, why is that? But I'm sure it's maybe we just have the context of confession. We hear it more, but let me just pull back on that and let me approach it this way. So I mean, we hear in popular language the word addicted being used for everything.
Hmm.
Okay, so I'm addicted to chocolate. I'm addicted to TV. I'm addicted to
Social media.
social media. I'm addicted to gambling, all etc. Okay, so from a very strict medical perspective, they would be very reluctant to go down that line, and they keep it very. Certainly, it's somewhere like King's College in London that its substances is the truest sense of that sort of in terms of addiction from a medical perspective, and in terms of behavioral things, that gambling is the only one so far that they have looked at. But if you were to ask me, behavior, okay, I think that we can all, in many parts, I think it's instead of using the word addicted, that we can have compulsions towards eating chocolate and all of these things, whatever. And impulsivity might be a big thing in some people's lives, just from a genetic perspective, first of all. So it doesn't matter what it is that they're going to be sort of driven to behave in that way. So when I think of something like masturbation and pornography, they are very, very different issues, first of all, ethically. Okay. But what is, I think, important for our conversation, anything, any behavior that we repeat from a neuroscience point of view, okay? Let's look at what's actually happening inside the brain. And any behavior that we repeat constantly, that drives pleasure, okay, and releases endorphins and all of these things that we hear, including something like sport, okay, we can um, it activates the reward center, and so we'll hear people talking about dopamine, this chemical neurotransmitter dopamine, and that's a transmitter in our brains, that it's not so much about pleasure, but it's the anticipation of pleasure.
Hmm.
And so if we get locked into behaviors of, say, chronic masturbation, or looking at pornography, or gambling, or any of these other things, um, it acts like a drug, because that's been activated and activated and activated. And I think that's why some people really struggle around it. It's like a dopamine addiction, and that can be very, very powerful. And I mean, I don't think that any of us should ever underestimate how powerful that can operate in any of our lives. But the question, I mean, I think when like to go back to what I was saying about, for me, the mission is about how do you help people to not just give up drugs or not just to give up alcohol, but to thrive and to live well. Part of that is going to be how do you help those people move back into positive relationship with life, with the world, with God, with their families, and for me, that's the journey of addiction. Is that the journey into addiction is one where we lose, where we become alienated from ourselves and from the world and from proper relating to
Mm-hmm.
people, and the journey back out of it is that journey into relationship. So and including with that relationship, and maybe fundamentally relationship itself. Okay, so if we were to look at something like pornography or masturbation, the question is, what are you relating to? And why I mean, if this is happening so much in your life that it's become problematic, and that it's that it's making you, it's causing a lot of anxiety and a lot of stress, it's obviously something that's not healthy. And the question is, but what is the need that it's meeting? What is it that's missing in your life? What is it that what are the what are the quality of the relationships in your life with God, with self, with others, that maybe need to be addressed? I really believe that at the heart of any of these compulsive behaviors, there's something that needs to be looked at in terms of being in proper relationship with the world, you know?
Can I be very straightforward and ask, do you think someone with a good relationship, with a lot of right relationship, will they not struggle with any of this?
That's a good question, and I don't know the answer to that. But I suspect that it is. I mean, like, look, the reality, Terence, in all of this, and we know this as much as priests as married people will, or anything. Sexuality is a really important part of our life, and the sexual drive in all human beings is very powerful and
Mhm.
is very real. So, masturbation, something like masturbation, is hugely prevalent in people's lives.
Yeah.
I think the difficulty is what happens when it gets out of control, or what happens when it's really stressing you out, or when it's really anxious. Is coming to confession, for example, all the time and confessing it, is that helping? And my answer, my suspicion in that is that it's not.
Mm.
And so we
Okay.
hear people sort of constantly coming back. And I think that maybe we as a church really need to talk more about sexuality and about sex drive, but also to help people maybe to pull back and go, okay, you have this problem in your life, or for you it's presenting as a problem. For other people it mightn't be, but for you it's presenting as a problem. So the question is, what is really going on? What is it that you're looking for behind this? What need is this fulfilling for you? Because I know that, I mean, my belief in God is that we've been created as human beings. We're not angels. So our life is full of ups and downs, and sometimes we're good, sometimes we're less good. But God sees the bigger picture in all of that.
Yeah.
So I don't have an issue with God in any of this. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think that we can help people to maybe become less, from a human and a psychological perspective. We know the more that we worry and obsess about something, the more we end up actually doing it.
Yeah.
So, how do you
Yes.
get people just to relax back and to look at it from a human perspective and go, okay, this is not something that I want in my life in the way that it is presenting at the moment. So, what is it that I need to look at? What is it that I could do? See, it's not just a matter that you change it sort of to exercise or something like that.
Yeah.
Is there something deep inside me that's crying out for love or for attention, or
Okay.
am I in good relationship with myself, first of all?
Mhm.
I don't know.
Yep. Maybe I'd just like to just add a little bit to what you have just said, just to prevent people having 100 comments bombarding what we have just said, you've mentioned something to the effect that perhaps coming for confession is not helpful for these people. Maybe I would just like to rephrase that to say that um, just coming for confession is not helpful. Like,
Sure.
coming for confession is perhaps just one part of it, and I think the important thing, perhaps for people to realize, is that yeah, don't listen to this podcast and stop coming for confession, but to understand what the confession is for.
Sure.
I
Okay.
think many people come for confession because they are just purely trying to get rid of their guilt.
Sure.
But from what you have just said, maybe whoever that comes, they should see this as the opportunity to kind of help them to see how they can move further on in developing right relationships, in the different area of self-development, so that this what would the right word be, this compulsion, or the how to that drive will lessen
Sure.
in a bigger picture.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if
And
that's a fair way to
I think
kind of
it's a very fair, and I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say that people shouldn't come to confession, but
no, no,
I know
you
the
didn't.
pattern myself in my own life and from ministry of people constantly come back, but they're not moving on, they're not finding it a solution. And I think when we come to confession, we come to meet God, and God forgives us. So,
Hmm.
so the confession absolutely is very important, but not just in this area, in all of our lives. But the how you've summed it up is very good. It invites us to actually look deeper and to ask the bigger questions, and also, like, I mean, we'll actually find what's very interesting. If you go onto YouTube, you will find podcasts from a completely secular perspective of men, now particularly men talking and about the need to stop masturbating and to go on this what they call the dopamine detox. So to try and cut back on these things that are we're just doing for pleasure, and because there is a recognition that these compulsions become problematic in our lives. So there's a whole movement going on out there beyond the church, and I think that it would be helpful to encourage people sort of to look at that and go, what is it that you want from life?
Hmm.
What type
Yeah.
of a person do you want to be? What type of relationships do you want to have with yourself, with others, and then make moves towards making that happen.
Okay. Just we in this topic we can probably go on for a few more hours, but I'm just gonna kind of wrap it up so that perhaps in the future we can invite you for more sessions. But maybe I just want to hear your opinion on what do you think about people who might spiritualize this whole issue a little bit, to me a little bit too much. So they see this as a spiritual uh, reality, a spiritual fight, you know. So they see masturbation and pornography as a spiritual attack, and that this is some priests that I know even say that, you know, we kind of need to pray for deliverance, and you know, ask people to just pray and trust in God, and and with that you will have enough strength to get out of this whole reality. What would you have to say about that?
Well, I think people find many different journeys to God, and to deal with issues. I mean, the concept of, like, for many things that we pray it away.
Mm-hmm.
Like, prayer is very powerful when it's done, but just, I think, praying that it's good, that something's going to stop. What we find actually, spiritually, is that that doesn't actually work. That sometimes it becomes so obsessive that we end up killing ourselves with that. So I would be very reluctant to say that something is good or that it's bad in the spiritual world. I think that I think that if we come to believe in the God of Jesus Christ, who showed his face through Christ, who was compassion and who understood the difficulties and the problems of human living, that I think the first the greatest step that we can make in a journey out of addiction or compulsion, for example, is that recognition that there is a power greater than ourselves that's on our side,
Yeah.
that's not there as a big moral judge with a big stick, but that is on our side and that can give us the encouragement and maybe put people in our lives, whatever, to move forward. So the power of God in all of these things for me is wild.
Yeah.
And I see it on the streets of London, in drug and alcohol centres all over the place. These people mightn't go to church, but they speak about God and that how they've had this spiritual experience through 12-step
Mhm.
programs or something like that. So the spiritual side is really important. But a certain version of spirituality that says you're wrong, you're bad, um, um, you shouldn't be doing that. I'm not sure that it has really helped a lot of people in my opinion, and I'm not sure that it's very close to the God of Jesus Christ that Jesus Christ came to reveal. So
Yeah. So yeah, thank you so much for that. I believe for some of the listeners, even after all this, it might still not provide an answer to
mm,
them. And what I would have to say is that for the listeners, maybe this conversation is not enough for you to find a complete answer to deal with whatever that you are going through, but do try to use this as an invitation to start uh, either talking to someone else or to start a journey of discovery. To I think the worst thing someone in this state can be is to just let things be and just let the cycle keep continuing.
sure,
So I think for anyone who is struggling, just don't give up and to just continue a journey of discovery to understand yourself better, to understand how we relate to other people, and to understand or to discover the God who loves us very much, who is always supporting us to become the better version of ourselves, I
sure.
guess. Yep.
So if I could sum that up as well, Terence, I think for anybody out there who is struggling with either addiction or compulsive behavior,
Mm-hmm.
I think the beginning steps of that are, as you said, to maybe reach out, to begin a new conversation. But what I know from my experience and from my studies is that if we the whole area of stigma around this and shame is huge. And if we remain stuck in a place where this is part of our life, but we're constantly beating ourselves up with a big stick of shame, we're never going to get out of it. Shame is the one thing that will actually keep us trapped. So certainly, we need to, and as a church, we need to address stigma around this area, be it in you know sexuality or in addiction to substances or that, and invite and create safe spaces for people to actually explore this and to find their way out, that journey out of that addiction. So just on a very last note, you had said that some people mightn't find the answer from this, having listened to this podcast. And I'm going to start with myself. I would love easy answers, and I would love black things to be black and white. But I think all of us, if we were to be honest, that nothing in life is black and white. There is no one easy answer to this. It's a journey, and it's a journey where we make mistakes, and it's a journey where we have little successes. But God is with us, and that's the most important part.
All right. Thank you. I think that's very insightful and very inspiring. I would just like to change the context a little bit. Now, I would like to kind of address anyone who might be looking or listening to this podcast and say that, wow, this is a very inspiring redemptrist. And perhaps I would like to consider being one of this group of people, knowing that there are such wise people in our midst. So Noel, I would like you to perhaps also address anyone who might be considering a religious vocation, not necessarily to the redemptorists, but anyone who is considering a religious vocation. But also for those who is just thinking maybe the redemptorists is a very interesting group of people to join. What would your advice for them be?
I think, funny enough, my advice would be exactly the same as what I said at the end of the last one. It's a journey.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to create safe spaces for people to come and explore that journey with us, and to talk about vocation, or and what I would say to anybody who is thinking about it is that, again, there's no black and white answers to this, and there's not going to be any perfect way to do this. But what you, I think, what we all need to pray for is actually courage, and to take a step on the journey and see where it brings you.
Okay.
And you'll know, and we'll all know whether it's we're on the right path, whatever, because that's how God works. So I'd say have courage, speak to people,
Mm-hmm.
and hopefully, and I'm sure in Singapore that you create lots of opportunities for people to come to speak to you about that,
Yeah.
and be courageous, take a step and see. Um, it's not a death sentence signing up on the first day, you know.
Yeah. Yes. So do come and speak to us wherever you are. You can always write to us, and even if you are very interested to have a chat with Father Noel, I'm sure he will be willing to kind of communicate with you a little bit and then refer you back to us here in Singapore and Malaysia. So anyway, because of the time constraint, I just kind of have to stop this conversation with you, Noel. But I'm sure this won't be our last conversation, and I really hope sometime in the future we will be able to invite you here to Singapore or Malaysia. And if not, to help us with some of the celebration or to join in our celebration, or perhaps you can just come and have a conversation with the people here with regards to addiction, masturbation, or pornography. I'm sure a lot of people would love to have that conversation with you. So, with that, I want to say a very big thank you. Noel, I know you are very busy. Thank you so much for taking this time. And I really hope to have more conversations with you in the future.
Thank you very much, Terence, and thank you so much for the invitation. I know that it was you asked me quite a while ago, whatever the
Yeah, 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 yeah.
but it's been wonderful, and thank you for the opportunity, and thank you to all your listeners as well.
All right. Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Okay, welcome back everyone, and I hope in this conversation you have managed to pick up some good pointers, and especially on how we can deal with if we are struggling with masturbation and pornography. So, Prabhu, after listening to this conversation, do you have any feedback, any insights that you would like to share?
Yes, this is a very good podcast, I would say, especially very relevant to the young people of this generation. And I always remember in my seminary formation and in the seminary classes, we were always taught this one point again and again, no, in social morals, in Catholic social teachings, in moral theology, and everywhere, that every person is created in the image and likeness of God, endowed with an inherent human dignity. Now, what these addictions does is it undermines that freedom and enslaves a human person to substances, to videos, to media, and also causing physical and mental harm So I think this has to be reflected by the viewers and by all of us in order to live our Christian freedom to the fullest.
Yeah, and also perhaps just to reiterate to the viewers, um, if we are struggling in this area, it is in fact just a journey of growth. Okay, so don't lose hope. If we are struggling, just be aware that there are a lot of people that might be struggling too. So let's just have that hope in God, and we just take one step at a time. I believe all God is asking of us is that we keep putting in the effort and we keep growing, and that's very much part and parcel of life. We grow and we become better versions of ourselves each day. So we will just put a pause on that topic for the time being, because we have a fair bit of information to share with the listeners on what is coming in terms of the church event, and what is coming for the coming year actually. So firstly, still some of the events that's going to happen in January. So for those who are here in Singapore, from the 18th to the 25th of January this year is the week of prayer for Christian unity. And therefore, this is a time where we try to be aware of the need for us to come together as a united community of believers in Christ. Now, so some of us, although there is still something that is separating us, but more importantly, we should focus on what unites us. And I hope that for all the listeners during this week from the 18th to the 25th of January, you can at least offer up a prayer for the intention that all the Christians in the world will be united. And
Yeah,
Anthony, do you want to give
yeah.
us?
On the next up is our Chinese New Year celebrations, the exciting.
Woo! 恭喜发财!
I just asked Father Terence what is the uh, the animal that would be represented by this year, and he said
Yeah, it's the snake, it's the serpent. Yeah.
certain. And on the Chinese New Year Eve itself, we don't have the usual 6:30 p.m. mass, but instead the Chinese New Year Eve mass will be at 10 p.m. It will be preceded by a pre-event at 9:30 p.m.
Yeah.
And on the first and second day of the Chinese New Year, which is on 29th of February and 30th of February this year, the being public holidays, the morning mass will be at 9 a.m. and the evening mass at 6:30 p.m. There won't be any lunchtime mass during these 2 days.
Okay, so especially for all the Chinese, so while you are celebrating, it's always good to come and give thanks to God and ask for God's blessing during the Chinese New Year. So do come and join us in any of these masses, okay? And also beyond that, 2025 is a very special year for us here in Novena Church. So Prabhu, what is so significant about this year?
This is the 75th anniversary of the Novena Church. So we are
Yes.
very excited and we are very happy, and we have a huge list of events lined up to celebrate together.
Yeah. So, in fact, 5 years ago, we wanted to celebrate in a very big way our 70th anniversary. We have planned a lot of programs throughout the year, but then COVID came. So, most of our activities were not able to be made real. And therefore, this year we decided to bring back all the activities and add even more to invite all the community of the faithful to come together to celebrate this great momentous event. All right. So just a rundown on what might be coming. So we are still in the process of finalizing some of the dates, some of the events, and hopefully by the end of this month, we will be able to publish the calendar of events through the year. But now we are just giving you a kind of a quick sample of what you can expect. Now, in March this year, on the 22nd of March, we will have a family walk event. So basically, we want to invite all the family members, all of the faithful to come as a family and Even if you want to come by yourself, sure. But we are going to have a nice morning walk and then a little bit of fellowship together just to enjoy each other's company and to promote healthy living. Okay, but in March we are also starting Lent, and therefore we will have again our regular social mission project in Lent. And this year it will be something quite interesting, but we will give you more details at a later time.
Yes, and in the month of April 2025, we will have our first pilgrimage in view of this 75 years of Novena Church. And this, I heard, it's going to be an exciting place, and more informations are going to come very, very soon.
Yes, and so it will be an Alphonsian pilgrimage. So basically, whoever that goes to this pilgrimage, you will be visiting important sites relating to the Redemptorist. All right. Now, in May, now this is going to be interesting for those who like music. We will have an evening with the Novena choirs. So I believe Prabhu is the main one that is spearheading this event. That we were having all the choirs practicing, and they will be presenting some of their best
Yeah.
works. All right, so do come and join us.
Something very beautiful is coming. And in the following month, in the month of June 2025, we are going to have the launch of a new edition of Novena booklet. This is something going to be very historical because the Novena booklet is so dear to each of the devotee of our Mother of Perpetual Help. And not only that, we are going to launch the 75th anniversary theme song. So this is
Yes.
going to be a super duper month.
Yeah, and we are also going to have a competition for the theme song. Okay, so for all those composers, you can actually start preparing, and hopefully you can submit some really good pieces. And who knows, we might be singing the song that you have composed for us very soon. Now, in the month of July is a Laity week, so we will have a full week of activities specifically targeting the laity. Or what specifically, you will have to uh, uh, see it at a later time. And on the 26th of July is the Feast of Joachim and St. Anne. Now it has been dedicated specially for us to remember our elderly. So we will have a special day with the elderly with a lot of activities that comes along with it. So more details to come.
Yes, and in the month of August, apart from the feast of our founder St. Alphonsus on August 1st, we also will have a family day carnival that is scheduled for the 3rd of August this
Okay.
year.
Yeah, I'm involved in this, and the preparatory group, they are really going all out. So it will be a day of a lot of fun, a lot of games, a lot of food, a lot of performances. The Redemptorists are going to perform on that day, so do come and join us and have all the fun on that day. Right, in September we will have our annual procession. So that's the biggest, the highlight of the whole year celebration. And this year will be very special, where there will be a lot of very special invitees. But also, hopefully, it can be a time where we can really come as a community of faith to give thanks to our Mother Mary, who have been interceding for us all this while, and to ask for her continued new prayer and blessing for each and every one of us. Of course, before the annual procession, there will be a triduum. There will be a day dedicated to youth. There will be some concerts that come along with that, and also for those who want to get involved in something a little bit more serious. The week before, we are also going to have a theological and missiological conference to reflect about mission, to reflect about pilgrims, to reflect about the shrine, so on and so forth. And so all the details will come at a later time. And also on that month itself, we will have another group to go on a pilgrimage. So you have two choices. You can either go in April or in September.
And in the following month, month of October, one of my favorite Redemptorist saints, St. Gerard Majella, on the 16th of October, we have planned for a children's mass.
Yeah. And finally, in November, for those who are Chinese speaking, we are going to launch the second episode of Timeless Mother, 跨时空的好母亲. So if you have watched already the first episode, you will know that it is a very well done production. So now we are going to do another follow-up series, and we will have a concert in conjunction with that. So you'll hear some live performances, and then we will watch the second episode together. So do come and join us for that event.
And
And finally,
all these in the month of December, we have a grand gala dinner. That would be the
yes.
summing up of the whole year.
Yeah. So that will really be the time for us to let our head down and have a crazy celebration. So we have really a lot in place for this whole year, and we really hope that all of you can come and join us in this all the celebrations. All right. So it has been a quite a long episode at this time, so I think we will just end here. Really, I want to thank all our listeners for being patient and being with us all the while up to this point. Maybe we can just wish all our listeners a very happy and blessed Chinese New Year up front, and we will be seeing you next month. Okay? Yeah, one more point. If you have something that you want to share or further um, ask and clarify about the topic that we have been talking about in addiction, masturbation, pornography, you are more than welcome. Please write in our comments, and we hope to see if we can respond to you and we can bring further conversations into our podcast in the future. So please let us know what you would like us to share about. Okay? So with that, thank you and see you very soon.
Thank
And
you, everyone.
yeah, we will be seeing Father Anthony Prabhu when we see him again in our future episodes. So all the best, Anthony, and
Thank
bye
you.
bye.
Thank you.